All right, test, check 1, 2. How we sounding? I think that sounds all right. Let's get this thing rolling. There I am. Hopefully there you are. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the very first Wednesday song feedback stream. Traditionally in the past on the channel, we've been doing this on Fridays, but we are moving things around a bit. We're switching things up, and we're gonna start doing this on Wednesdays starting right now. So other than that, it's gonna be the same basic format, the same kind of idea as things in the past, the streams in the past. I'm gonna kind of go through the rules again one more time, and I'm gonna also toss the spreadsheet in the chat. Give me one moment to grab that link. Toss that in here. There is the link to the spreadsheet, and I'm going to pin that up to the top. So if you are new around here, if you're joining us for the first time, what's up, Daniel? How you doing today? What you're going to do is you're going to click on that link that's now pinned, and it's going to take you to a spreadsheet. You're going to toss in the link to wherever I can stream your song, and then I'm going to listen them in the order received. That's kind of the idea. A couple basic rules and guidelines and things for you guys who are going to be submitting songs. What's up, Gauntya? How are you doing today? Number one, ideally original tracks, so no remixes or anything like that, partially just because copyright stuff and YouTube is a little weird and I just don't want to have to deal with it. And also partially because if I don't know the song you're remixing, it's hard to me to give feedback because I don't know what's part of your track and what's part of the remix and things like that. On top of that, I am switching the name of the stream from Feedback Fridays to WIP Wednesdays. So it does not have to be a works in progress, although it is highly encouraged, just because if you've already finished a track, you're not going to go back and like change the track. It can help you with the next one you're making, but ideally works in progress are kind of better because I can actually give you feedback and you can actually go back in there and change things. Other than that, if you are submitting a track for feedback, it is encouraged but not required that you also give other people feedback. That way it's not just me talking into the screen at you guys, but everybody helps set each other out and we can all grow together as a community. On top of that, like my feedback is not necessarily perfect. Like other people might have different opinions and actually love it when chat disagrees with me about feedback. And I would encourage you guys to let other people know what you're thinking about their tracks. In terms of feedback and like what qualifies as feedback, it's good or I liked it doesn't count as feedback unless you followed up with why you liked it. It can be anything. But generally what I tell people is think about if this was your track, what do you do? What are the next 2 or 3 things you do to improve whatever song you're listening to? And that's usually a good place to get started with feedback. Songs will be reviewed in the order that they are received. So I'm just going to go kind of top to bottom through the spreadsheet. If you cannot make it to a stream and you would still like to get feedback, you can always just send it to me either through Discord or through just accessing the exact same spreadsheet that we use every single week. So just go in there and that'll put it on the list. And all of these videos are uploaded to the channel, so you can always watch them later if you want. Other than that, one song at a time until we get to the end. So once we get through like everybody getting a track, usually I'll have time for multiples from the same person. But until then, only put one track in until we get to the end, and that's super helpful. What's up, Janef? How you doing? Yeah, it's been a while. Awesome. I'm glad you like the new stream schedule. I already like it better, I think, than what I was doing in the past. So I'm always curious what you guys think, what works best for you in terms of timing and days and stuff like that. But I'm going to stick with the schedule for at least the next few months. Yeah, you can still send me stuff that's finished. It's totally up to you. I don't mind taking a look at finished songs as well. So feel free to put in songs, even if they're about to head out for release. I'm always curious what you guys are up to and what you're working on. But yeah, that's kind of the idea here. And of course, if you like what's going on with the channel, if you're enjoying the feedback, if you're enjoying any of the other streams, any of the videos that I've been doing, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. Check out the Discord if you have not yet already. I also have the Patreon up and running, and I'm doing exclusive Patreon streams and a lot of stuff over there as well. So if you want to support me, that's a great way to do it. You also, all the feedback is free. Don't feel like you need to pay for it. I do this for fun because I love doing it. But if you do want to pay me, like I said, you can either hit the Patreon or you can just super chat me through YouTube, which is a thing that you can do, which is great. So yeah, so that's kind of the idea. I already got a couple tracks in the spreadsheet, which is great. So the very first one was a leftover from last week. Couldn't have time to get to it. So Beatmaker Society, I don't think you're in here yet, but usually you pop in pretty early on. So we're gonna start off with you. All right, let's toss this up here. And make sure audio is going into YouTube. Cool, and as always, let me know if things are too quiet or loud or whatever. I'm gonna turn up a little bit more. That's a super interesting track. Yeah, there's a lot of things that I think about this track that are totally working for me. I think that it has this very kind of upbeat energy to it, and I was kind of expecting it to be a little darker based on some of the other sounds. And so the contrast between those two things, a couple people mentioned like exercising, that has this very kind of like 80s exercise kind of workout vibe to it, which I think is kind of cool. But for me, I probably would have done a slightly different beat than what you did, but I think it works for what you're going for. I think that the big issue for me is, especially during this middle area, it just feels a little too repetitive. And I think a couple ways to get out of that is, number one, you have this little breakdown section that comes like right towards the end. This part, have that be like 45 seconds to a minute earlier. And that way it's like this nice kind of middle break section, because I feel like you actually were able to explore a lot of new areas and a lot of new space in here that were really interesting. And I think that, basically from here, whenever the beat comes in to here, you do break it down a little here, but only for a second. Like the main beat section just feels like it goes on for a really long time. So I think having a big break in the middle of it to really like explore some of that space and some of the other cool sounds you're doing can be really useful. The other two elements that I think were really kind of making it feel loopy were, number one, the vocoded sample, which I loved. I thought it actually worked great. I like that you could like just barely understand it. It just says the same thing over and over again, and it changes pitch a bit. But I wish it did more. I wish there were different either phrases it was saying, or rhythmically is a little different. I think you can use repetition to your advantage in a lot of situations. But I think in this situation, the vocoding, it was just like, okay, we've heard the same thing over and over again, and now I'm ready for something a little different. And I think that would make a big difference. Kind of along the same lines, the bass line that you're using, it's just like those two bass notes that go back and forth. Switch those up a little bit more. I think that really how you switch up's up to you, rhythmically, note-wise. Have them change octave, have them do something a little different. It just is like, it's the same two notes back and forth for a really long time. And I think for a short period of time, you can totally get away with it. But over the length of time that you have, it gets definitely a little bit repetitive. Other than that, I really liked it. I think that, like I said, like I personally wouldn't have gone for that beat. If it were up to me, I would maybe put a few more like closed hi-hats in there, or maybe make the hi-hats do some a little bit more. You added in some like cool, interesting, weird percussive stuff about halfway through. Those are really cool. More of that would be great, both in terms of volume and in terms of what they're doing in the song. But I like that element quite a bit. I think that added a lot of character. Yeah, and then I love this section here. Like those sounds you add in right at 2:59, 3 minutes, those kind of sound effects, stuff like that is great. I'm digging that quite a bit. Like as a build-up, this is great. And then it just kind of does the same thing again. So I think I'm not sure if this is just a placeholder, if you're planning on putting something different in there, but I think it'd be really cool if right after that little break section, you have that crazy sound effect, it builds up a lot of tension, and then you brought in like a whole new idea right at the end there, and then you went to an outro. That could be a cool way to like really build off the tension, build off the climax that you're building there, and actually make it feel like it really delivers. Because I was expecting more right at this kind of like 3:13 section. And it turned out to be just the same thing we've already heard before. So I would try getting experimental with that last little bit and see what happens. I think that'd be really cool. But yeah, overall, super cool track. Chat, you got any other feedback? Yeah, bass could definitely use a B section. It's kind of an interesting style. Like I'm wondering, like genre-wise, what you'd even call this. Sweet. Well, for anybody who is just joining us, if you would like to submit a track, you can click on the link that is pinned up at the top of the chat, and that's where you're going to send me your tracks. And Ganya, yeah, I'd love to talk to you about website design. Mine is okay, I think, at best, and I really want to I got a lot of ideas, and I need somebody to kind of guide me through how to make my website look better. Sweet. So moving on to the next track, we got a track from Daniel.
father used to work there. He 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 used to work there. Used to make steel, you know. Smoke from the stacks. Used to work there. He 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 used to work there. My father used to work there. He used to work there. He used to work there.
In GM speak, Lordstown has been unallocated. 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 Unallocated.
They don't care. I mean, you're replaceable.
Cuts come as the automaker is reporting a near record $12 billion profit last year.
They don't care.
$12 billion profit.
I mean, you're replaceable.
My father used to work there. He 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 used to
You know what the trouble is, Brucey?
work there. He used to work there.
We used to make shit in this country, build shit. Now we just put our hand in the next guy's pocket.
Nice. That's a super cool track. I like how a lot of your stuff has this very kind of political or has a lot of societal commentary on it without being too over the top or too in your face about it, which is an issue that sometimes can happen. I think in terms of arrangement and kind of the style you're going for, I think you're doing a really fantastic job here. I think probably more so than some of the other tracks you've played before. Everything made sense. It all sounded really good. It has this very kind of slow and grinding rhythm that I think works really well for the kind of the context of what you're trying to say with the song. I think honestly, the two places that you could use some work here if, that I think would be really helpful is number one, in your mixing. In general, I think your mixes are sounding really clean. Nothing sounded too out of place, but I think if this were my track, what I would want is those drums to be like really heavy hitting, just like giving that, like really driving home the impact of the message of the song. And I think right now I can hear your drums, and they all, like I said, they all sound good. They also sound like relatively where you want them to be in terms of in the mix. But I want them just to like sound like super over the top and super powerful. And so there's a lot of ways you can do that. One is just get really dialed in with your compression. Number two, try some parallel compression. That's honestly probably the first thing I would do, is like experiment with parallel compression and these drums and seeing how powerful you can make them. And then also, of course, just like playing with the volumes and just making sure everything is sitting in the right place. Because like I said, the drums are good, especially this big kind of opening impact kick. Like that kick, I want it to like feel it in my chest. And right now it's cool, but like maybe a bit more mid-range in there, and layering it up a bit more could be really helpful. But I like what the drums are doing a lot. I think the drum production themselves, aside from the mixing, sounds really good, and I'm super into it. My other kind of major piece of feedback kind of fits in with a little bit with your drums and your mixing, is that I think because what you're going for here is you're talking a bit about kind of like this idea of creation and building things and industry and factories and the lack thereof. And so I think there's a lot of room here to use very kind of industrial sounds to layer up both with your drums as well as with your other sounds. And maybe you're doing that a little bit already, but I would go in and like find some weird samples of like people hitting wrenches on pipes or just like machinery moving, and just using that as like part of building this world that you're creating, especially with the drums, but I think also as ambient sound design, as ways to impact things, just metal hitting metal, things clanking, chains, all that kind of stuff I think would layer in here really well, especially on top of the drums. And I hope them bring them out and also give them part of that impact. So those would be the two big things that I would really think about. I think your use of the vocal samples works really well.
Father used to work there. He 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 used to work there.
You could, like I've heard people use like, take a big pile of chains and just like drop a big pile of chain, like a chunk of chain, and then like using that as part of your snare. And that's a really cool way to like layer things up.
He used to work there. He used to work there. He used to work
But like your hi-hat production sounds really good. I think you could maybe add one more pad layer to go in with what you already got. And that would also help kind of like make it feel a little bit more dynamic and kind of shifting around, but I don't think that's super necessary. What's up, Beatmaker? We already took a look at your song from that I didn't get to last week. So if you want to watch that, you can jump back and check out the video from earlier. I don't know if you were here for it earlier. And then right around here, you have a sound that comes in. It sounds kind of like an electric guitar with a bunch of reverb and is panned way off to the right side. Maybe make that a little bit louder and a little bit more like a focus point. It sounds really kind of distant right now. Maybe it's just a pad. Maybe it's not a guitar. Like this part's dope. Those little tom rolls sounds great. But again, here, these drums need to be way more impactful.
In GM speak, Lordstown has been unallocated.
This part reminds me a little bit. There's an album it's like a Bill Laswell side project called Blood of Heroes. And it has this kind of like industrial moving drums, and maybe check that out to get some inspiration for what they're doing with drums and guitars with distortion and ambience and creating this kind of like dystopian kind of, sound design. Not a sound design, but like aesthetic. But yeah, it's cool. I like it a lot. I think it's got a lot of really interesting stuff going on, and I think it's getting really close, but more layering on those drums and a bit more mixing on those drums, and I think that'll make it feel really heavy and impactful, which is what I want out of this track. Chat, you got any other thoughts, comments, questions, feedback, ideas? Let me know. But next up, we got a track from After Party.
The world of human feelings has been much less explored than the whole of the universe put together. What have we been doing all these thousands of years?
Yeah, Daniel, let me know if you have any questions about those drums.
It's a useless sacrifice.
between us.
I like how you end with just silence with that little bit of noise in there. This is dope. I love this. Big fan. Honestly, not a lot of critical feedback here. I think just stylistically, especially, once again, using the visuals to really enhance the impact of what's going on with the music worked great. I think that if anything, I kind of wish you used this little break at the end, or I guess it's just the end of the song. Use this. And then you bring everything back one more time.
The only way
or like use this little bit.
was to float through the terrifying void between us.
And then the beat comes back in like right around now. I think that'd be cool just as a way to like, I don't know. I feel like it'd feel more satisfying if I got to hear that beat one more time because it happens so fast and it's over so fast. So that's one of my pieces of feedback. The other one is the drums a little bit, I think. Your kick, I like a lot. It's got this very low, boomy kind of sound to it. And I think a little bit more of a mid-range kind of punch will help round it out a bit more and maybe emphasize that kind of, or de-emphasize the boomy part of the kick and emphasize more of the punchy impact part of the kick. It just, I'm not sure it quite fits with the vibe of the rest of the track. I think it's good, but I think it could be a tiny bit better. Other than that, like, has this very retro, old school pseudo Boards of Canada kind of thing.
Less explored. And what have we been doing all these thousands of years?
And like your use of noise, and it might just be noise from the video recording, but it's super cool. It's like this adding this little bit of, again, like kind of lo-fi crispness that works really well. And I think one of my big issues with just like lo-fi music in general is a lot of it can sound really just the same. It's kind of just like the same beat and the same kind of like chords over and over again. And this has a really unique quality to it where it's like it's lo-fi, but like it's also kind of futuristic at the same time. And so you get this kind of like clash of things where you have like, it's what people in the past thought the future was going to be, kind of like what the video is doing. And that little lead right there reminds me of Lauren, who's one of my all-time favorite producers. So that lead's crushing it. Yeah, the use of delay there is excellent. This is a fantastic song. I really like it. I think like a tiny bit of tweaking here and there, but I think that if this is the style you're going for, and I remember like your Halloween one from last week was also kind of like you're just nailing this vibe really well, and that's really cool. So it's cool to see that like people doing the lo-fi thing, but also doing it in a way where like it still feels like you and sounds like you. Yeah, future throwbacks. That's what it's all about. But yeah, really cool track. Not too much, honestly, to say about it. Yeah, definitely Boards of Canada meets Lorne meets lo-fi hip hop kind of thing. But yeah, give me more tracks like this. I want to hear more tracks like this for sure. All right, next up, it's going to be another track from, or a track from Gauntya. I think he said that this is basically, it's on its way to be released already. So we're just going to kind of check out and kind of see what we think. How you doing? Damn, you guys are bringing the fire today. That is also a really dope track. Oh, Narco, thanks for the super chat. Super appreciate that. Yeah, Ganya, this is a dope track. Guys, if you are enjoying the stream and you would like to support the channel, you can feel free to hit the like button, subscribe button, any of those buttons. You can do a super chat. You can also check out the brand new Patreon that I'm doing extra bonus streams on. It should be linked below. But yeah, Ganya, you're gonna have to send me a link to this when this is released. It's sounding really polished to me. Drums sound really dope. The mixing on the whole thing sounds really clean. Sound design is fantastic. I like the subtle evolution from the kind of like first main beat section to the next beat section. It felt like things elevated in a really nice way. Just sounds really polished. The only real feedback I have is two really tiny minor things that I would consider if this was my track. The first was during your intro, you have this really kind of subtle kick at the beginning. Starts somewhere in here. That kick right there. That kick felt a little too minimal for me. And I feel like part of the point with that is that like when the actual kick comes in, you're like, wow, that sounds way bigger. So I understand where you're going for there, but I think the volume on this first kick could go up a tiny bit, and that way it helps kind of like bring people in a little bit. I think just listening to this by itself, I'd be like, oh, that sounds a little quiet to me. But that's not a huge deal. I think the fact that it does lead into the really big kick later on kind of makes up for it, and I think it's totally fine. The other thing was, especially towards the end here, as we get into this last like drop, I kind of wish there was one more high frequency element, like either like a really high pitched, like plucky synth kind of thing, or a like chopped up vocal, like a chopped up, pitched up vocal, just to add a little bit more energy up in that higher, mid to higher frequency range. I don't think you really need it. I thought it would have been cool just as a way to like also just like make it seem even more hyphy than it already is. But those are the only two things I can really think of. I thought the use of the vocal sample worked really well. The beat grooves really hard. The only other thing maybe I can think of is you have this kind of like warmer kind of sound. As far as I can tell, that doesn't change pitch, and it'd be nice if it changed pitch with the bass line, but I don't think that's also super necessary. I don't know what making an open barrel in the square means, but the track's dope. Sounds great. This part's also really cool. Like really good synth sound design here. Sounds epic. Love it. And that little synth line right before the beat comes in, also crushing it. So yeah, really polished. I'm digging it quite a bit. You're definitely gonna have to. I wish there was a way. Chat, let me know if you have any ideas about this. I wish there was a way so that people, when they submit songs, we can just get links to their SoundCloud or their social media or whatever. I think that'd be a really cool addition to the feedback and stuff like that. So if somebody makes a track you really like, you don't have to like find them on social media. You can just be like, oh, click the button. Maybe I'll add that to the spreadsheet. I'll add a column to the spreadsheet so people can link their social media with their tracks. So that way, if somebody listens to a track and they're like, oh man, Kanye had a really cool track, I want to hear more stuff by him. You can just follow that link. So maybe I'll just do that right now. I'm going to put it next to the comments column. Yeah, I'm gonna move it over one, hopefully. Oops. Live spreadsheet work. Oh no, I ruined it. I cannot get this thing. This column. All right, the column's just going right there. So yeah, so if you guys are submitting tracks and want people to check out your social media, you can put them in the column there. That way people can check each other out. Sweet. Yeah. Fantastic track. Really, really dig that one. Chat, you have any other thoughts, comments, questions, ideas? Let me know. I also want to all right, the other thing I want to do here, chat, I might need your help with this. There we go. So now when you put in links into the link column, it doesn't overflow onto the next one. And you guys came here for the song feedback, but really this is a spreadsheet stream. All right. Next up, we got a track from Janef. Slightly different vibe than the last one. Yeah, I love the variety of genres we get for the song feedbacks. Nice. As always, sounds really clean, nailing this vibe, like every single track you're doing. I think that it sounded a little sparse to me. It sounds like there was there's a lot of space in here in this mix that you could really fill. And I feel like you already have the basic ideas there already. Number one, this horn. Make this horn more of a major feature of the rest of this track. Because it's mostly guitar, and we get a little bit of horn here and there. But more horn across the board and a louder horn across the board, I think will really just like help kind of balance things out. The other big thing is you have these vocal samples kind of sprinkled throughout here, but they're really, really quiet. Trying to even find some, like right there. Those are great, but they're way too quiet. And so as I'm listening to that, they're just getting swallowed up by the guitar and the other elements of this track. So crank up those vocals and do more with it. I think that they sound really good, and they get this kind of nice mix of your style, your kind of like laid back, chill style. But when you process the vocals like this, it gives it this very modern feel. And so it makes it stand out amongst other things in a similar kind of genre. But yeah, I think it sounds really good. I think that more horns, more vocals, even more vocal stuff like that works really well. The other thing is your kick has like a slightly distorted sound to it. And I think a kick that is a little bit more clean would help out quite a bit. Normally your kicks are very clean, and so this one just like has like this little bit of like distortion to it. Yeah, so other than that, I think it's working. I think part of the big question here is, are you going to add like a whole like vocal verse on top of it, or are you going to keep this more of like an instrumental kind of thing? Yeah, Jeff, I definitely see using the creative restrictions here. I think that does help. I think if you're going to use 10 things, make sure each one of those 10 things really gets its chance to shine and really become more kind of like part of the mix. And that's where I think turning up those horns and those vocals that you already got in there really just like help kind of round it out. Unless you want to like add some verses in here, verses, choruses, that kind of thing. But I kind of like it just as the instrumental and just emphasize these vocals more. Yeah, that little vocal part is fantastic, and it just everything in that is too quiet though. So it's like those could really. Let me talk a little bit about vocals real quick. I was poking around on Spotify recently because I had some DJ gigs recently. Just kind of going through trying to find tracks, and I was looking at a bunch of tracks from artists from like all over the world, all different places. And I was noticed something very interesting about the number of plays different kinds of tracks got. And what I noticed for a lot of, especially in the kind of like EDM-ish world, is that tracks with vocals got massively more plays than instrumentals. And I think part of the reason for that is tracks with vocals, they get stuck, the lyrics get stuck in our head. They make the song stand out more so people remember it more. And I think with instrumental tracks, for a lot of people, they're just not as interesting because their brains can't latch on to what's going on in the song quite as much. That's just my theory. But I think that one of the beautiful things about using vocals in your track, even if they're just weird little like vocal things like that, is that it helps people remember your track. You know, especially if you're listening to a bunch of songs on a playlist, or they're just listening on the radio, or listen wherever people listen to music. You want your track to stand out. You want it to be memorable. You want it to be something that be like, oh, this sounds different than the other tracks I've been listening to recently. And I think in this situation, those little vocal things that you're doing will be the thing that makes it stand out. It's what stood out to me. So you want to make sure that those are really evident and present in the mix and how you're writing the song. So yeah, that's my little theory on vocals. If you're going to use them, make sure they're good and make sure that they actually like help your song stand out. I think kind of on the flip side, to me, a lot of the vocals sound exactly the same and sound really boring. So if you're gonna use vocals, make them sound unique and use them to your advantage. But yeah, fantastic track as usual. So beatmakers, just because we did one of your tracks earlier, I'm gonna skip over yours for right now, and then we'll get back to it in just a minute. Just so you know, I'm not purposely skipping you over. All right. Nice. I want to listen to this drop one more time. Nice. This is a really cool track. I like what you got going on here. I like the chaos. I like just all the different sound design. I like how everything mixes together and really kind of like shake things up. And you do a lot of different, interesting, experimental things all at once, and it works really well. And I've heard bunch of music like this before, and sometimes these drops can not really like get the point across. And I think this one actually does a really good job. So starting off, I think that the big thing here that was sticking out to me the entire time, and I feel like this has been the last 3 songs in a row maybe, is the kick. You're going for this really kind of distorted kick drum. And I'm not sure it's the right kick drum for this song. And I wonder if you have a slightly more punchier, more impactful kick with a little bit less distortion. I think it'll still hit as hard and still give you that same kind of impact, but have less of that mid-rangey tonality to it. And I think that'll fit together both during the intro as well as during the drop. So that would be the big thing that I kept on like, oh man, I want this kick drum to be a little cleaner and a little bit more punchy. And I think that will make a big difference, especially during this build. Like right there, like when you have that kick speed up like that, and it's just like, oh, it just like doesn't sound that interesting. It doesn't sound that like big, and it doesn't really like give me that impact. So especially there, but both the intro as well as the actual drop itself. Other than that, I really like your intro. The like kind of guitar with like the weird kind of swirling layers in the background works really well. So with the vocal sample also works really well. All right, and then here's the other piece of feedback, and this is true for both the intro kind of area as well as the actual drop itself, is in order to make this mix work, you're gonna have to drop a few layers occasionally. Not all the time, not all the layers all the time, but I think that especially with some of your more kind of like swirly background layers, they're taking up a little bit too much space in the mix, which is gonna make it harder to mix and harder to make it sound really kind of clean. So I think that like, you can hear the kind of like echoing in the background. I think it hits hard enough, but I think the issue to me is you're getting this mid-range distortion on it. It sounds kind of like overdrive on your kick, that I just don't think is doing the right thing for you. I think you need a kick that has a bit more low end and like a bit more in the like 100 to 250 hertz range. Give it a nice kind of like punchy impact, and less of the distortion on it. So a louder kick with less distortion, I think will actually make it feel like it's hitting harder, if that makes sense. But yeah, your swirling layers back here, turn them down a little bit in the mix, and that'll make it feel like you can hear everything a little better, and you can actually turn other things up louder. And then the same thing is true in the drop. I think you do a really good job, for the most part, jumping back and forth between different layers, but there's still a lot going on. And I think one of the things you'll find with really clean mixes in this style of music is they get really precise and really minimal about how many layers are happening at a time. Like right there, for example, there's like a couple things happening all at the same time, and then you might need to make a couple really tough choices about like deleting one layer for like a fraction of a second so that the other layer can shine, and being able to swap back and forth between different layers. And I think that'll make your life a lot easier. Because right now I think you're really close. The mix sounds really good for where it is now, but I think if you make some tough decisions and just like mute certain sounds for an 1/8 note or a 16th note or even a fraction of a second, will allow you to kind of jump around from one sound to the next, and number one, make it still sound cohesive, and number two, make your life a little bit easier when you're like mixing it all together. Yeah, like all these times I'm hearing multiple sounds at the same time, which you can do, but the less sounds that are playing simultaneously, the louder each sound can be. But I love it. I like stylistically, I think you're like spot on. I think it sounds really cool. It sounds really interesting. It has that kind of like Quiet Bison. What's the other dude who produces with Igloo Ghost all the time? I forget. I'm blanking on his name. Kai Winston. That kind of vibe where it's just like this kind of like really strange rhythms, but also works somehow, with a lot of distortion and just weirdness going on. So I like it a lot. I think the outro works too. Sounds good. But yeah, dope track. Like I said, I've one of my favorite things about doing these streams is just hearing the variety of styles that you guys are throwing at me, and it makes me feel really happy that people are just bringing some crazy shit, because that's the kind of music I actually really like to listen to. I think if I had to listen to like, a bunch of pop music doing these streams, I would go crazy. All right, I'm gonna jump over to Yogi. just because Gauntlet and Beatmaker have already submitted tracks, but I will definitely have time to get back to your other tracks. Yeah, I haven't done a lot of videos on mixing for the channel yet. It's something I'm planning on doing more, but I think that it's hard to make videos about it because mixing is such a personal thing. It's like you have to like listen to the song, and it's different for every song and every genre. So I'm trying to figure out how I want to approach mixing for videos on the channel. But that's definitely something that we need to talk about a lot. What's up, Yogi? Yeah, no worries. New time, new day. You can show up whenever you want, and that's totally cool. I would also just gonna point out, if anybody is just joining us and has a track that they would like to share, you can just click on the link up at the top of the chat and follow that, and that'll take you to the spreadsheet, and that's where you send me your tracks. Nice. Another really dope, really weird track. I love the kind of like housey, minimal IDM kind of vibe you're going for. A lot of things about this I love. Number one, the weirdness. Number two, just kind of like the overall, just like grooviness to it at the same time. It doesn't take itself too seriously, which is one of the big issues I have with a lot of electronic music. It has this kind of silly, playful vibe, and I think that's pretty awesome. I think that in terms of things that I might do to this track if it were mine, I like what you're doing with some of your percussion and your rhythm. You're doing some kind of like crazy weird hi-hat patterns that are always kind of shifting and changing and like splicing them in with different kind of glitchy sounds. However, that does make it a little bit hard to follow. And I think that if it were up to me, I might have one like shaker layer or something like that, shaker or a closed hi-hat or something that's really kind of consistent and a little bit easier to grasp on. And that way you can kind of ride that line a little bit more in between like danceability and just like weird, silly, goofy kind of song. And that way, if you like did want to play this out at a show or something like that, people could kind of still dance to it. Because right now it's just kind of like, it's doing so much at the same time. Especially over here. Like, listen to your hi-hat pattern. It's like kind of all over the place. So maybe something, like I said, a shaker to me would really kind of help fill in that space a little bit, just kind of like a little bit of groove on it. And that way, if people wanted to dance to it, they could kind of like get a feeling from that and still have all the other weirdness going on at the same time. That might be not be something you're into, and that's totally fine. But that's where I might go with it. Other than that, I can hear a little bit going on in the low end. It sounds like you've got like a little bit of like a sub bassy thing going in the background. I'm guessing I'm wanting a little bit more on the low end. Some kind of bass line that can like really, again, also kind of like drive the song forward a little bit more. It doesn't need to be like a super classic housey bass line, but a little bit more going on in the low end, I definitely wouldn't mind. I kind of have mixed feelings about the weird little like bit crushed noise you have going on here, but I think it's still kind of cool. Like as a sound, those little noisy sounds don't grab me as much as some of the other ones, but I don't necessarily think that's a problem. I think it's still like interesting and weird. I like this part a lot, actually. That weird little blippy sound. I can definitely hear more of that. I also think when it comes back in here, I'm not sure if this is the full arrangement or this is just like a little draft of it or an experiment, but have it come back in here and have things be way different than they were before. I might have mentioned this, I can't remember if it was for you or a different person last week when we were talking about feedback, but a little bit of like granular vocal processing, like taking a vocal sample and putting it in a granulator and making it sound kind of weird and jumping around, I think would fit this style really well. So if you've not played around with the granulator in Ableton Live, the Max4 Live device, toss some vocal samples in there and see if you can layer it with this, because I think it would work really well, because when you put a sample in a granular synthesizer, it jumps around from different parts of the sample, which gives it this chaotic, crazy kind of feel that I think would layer really nicely with the chaotic, crazy kind of feel that you already have on this track. But that's dope. Okay, yeah. I just hear this kind of music and I'm like, oh man, I just want granular vocals on it. Sweet. So at this point, we have gotten through all of these songs on the spreadsheet, except for people who have sent more than one song. So if you have not sent a song yet and you would like to get some feedback and get your track heard, now's the time to do so. Yeah, spectral time on vocals could also be really cool, but granulator is just, I think it would work really well. So if you want to send me a track, go ahead and do so. As well as if you're enjoying the stream, you're liking your feedback, go ahead and hit that like button, all that kind of stuff. That's super helpful. Also, I'm trying to do all the promotional stuff that I'm supposed to be doing here on YouTube. The Patreon is now live and active, and I'm doing Patreon only streams on Tuesdays, as well as a bunch of other stuff. So if you want to support the channel, you can check out the Patreon as well. All right, jumping back into another track from Beatmaker.
When we first laid eyes why I'll always care. But you will never know. And you'll feel so sad. Forever you will love, and you will always know. We didn't wanna suffer. There's so much left unsaid. Still call each other lovers. Only in your head. Then you had someone you brought around for fun. Didn't take too long. Before another one realized I'm the one.
Nice. That's a really sick track. A lot of stuff going on here. I think that the synthesizers in the synth sections actually do a lot to really like make this track stick out, and I think they layer really nicely with what's going on in the guitar and the drums and the bass. They actually like they mesh together in a really nice way. So really nice job on that. I feel like the drums sound really solid, sound really polished. I like the mix on them. They sound good. Same with the bass. I feel like the two people that are really kind of getting the short end of the stick on, at least in terms of the mix, are the vocalist and the guitarist. The vocalist sounds like she's got an amazing voice. However, it's not really popping through. And I think somebody said this in chat, that they just sound a little dry. And I totally agree with that. And I think the two and a half things you're really missing are, number one, just the right amount of reverb. The right amount of reverb on a good vocalist just changes everything. It like makes them go from like a good vocalist to just like they just shine. So finding a nice vocal preset for a reverb that you like, or kind of come up with your own, can be really, really handy here. And you want it to be just enough reverb that it's barely audible. Like you just barely want to know it's there. That's all you need. The other things that you need is a bunch more compression. Like if she's struggling to get through the mix, a bit of compression on those vocals will go a long way. Another thing you could definitely do here, if you were going to go back and do some more work on this, is vocal harmonies. Oftentimes when I'm recording a vocalist, I'll have them do the same take 5 or 6, same verse 5 or 6 times in a row. and then also record like little vocal harmonies on top of it. So just have them sing on top of themselves. And that's a great way to layer things up by having, multiple layers of the same vocalist say the same thing, and you process them a little differently. And some of them are like have a little bit more reverb and delay, and you can pan them differently, and you can do lots of stuff with it just to make them sound bigger. Or just vocal harmonies on top of it. Again, with more reverb on it, goes such a long way to really making the vocalist really kind of shine through. And then the last thing is, if nothing else, more volume on the vocalist. She's a great singer. She needs to stick out of the mix. I talked earlier about vocals and how important they are in helping people remember songs. Just make sure they're most of the time when you're making music with vocals, the vocals are the most important thing in the mix. Therefore, should be the loudest, or at least they should not be competing with anything else. The other situation you're running into is going to be your guitarist. Guitar was also a little bit quiet, but there's also a few sections in here where there's multiple layers of guitars going on at the same time. And what's happening is the layers of guitar are competing with each other and make it so you can't hear either that well. So in situations like that, where you do have multiple guitars happening at the same time, playing slightly different things, turn one up specifically and turn one down specifically. And that way one stands out as like the main idea layer, and the other one is like the supporting character layer. Let me see if I can find an example in here. This part right here. It works okay, but I think it'd be really cool if one of those guitar layers was turned up louder and one of them was a little bit quieter. And that way, one's kind of like echoing to the background, maybe pan it off to the side a little bit, and the other one's kind of like telling the story or being the main focus in support of the vocals. But other than that, I really liked it. Like I said, the drums work really well, the synth parts work really well. When you get to the distorted guitar part, the guitar sounds a little far away. It sounds a little distant, and I don't know if you turned it down to make up for how much more distortion there is or something. It just it didn't sound cohesive with kind of the mix of the rest of the song. So maybe play around with that a little bit if you want. And also layering on that could be really cool. And I really like this part at the end here. I think it sounds really cool. But yeah, other than that, I think it's a really cool track. I think it sounds really good. I think it works really well. And yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I agree with Nicole. Don't process the vocals too much. She's got a really nice, really clean voice. And so you just want to do that tiny little bit of sparkle on top of it, but without making it too much or too over the top. Sweet. So chat, any other thoughts, questions, ideas, comments? Let me know. Roberto, what's up? I haven't seen you in a while. Good to see you back here. We're going to jump to your track next. Yeah, no worries, Beatmaker. Glad you like it. Hopefully you guys are liking the new stream day. Wednesday works better than Fridays for people, it seems like. Nice. This is a different vibe for you guys. It has a bit of that kind of like 80s retro, like Drive soundtrack kind of, that kind of sound, mixed with a little bit of Wendy Carlos, a little bit of like Wendy Carlos switched on Bach kind of thing with some of the arpeggiators. It's cool. It's chill. It's like got a different thing going on for it. I agree with what somebody was saying in chat, where the drums are too loud, specifically your snare. The snare is really just kind of sticking out there. And it also, the snare sounds very 80s to me. It has this very 80s sound to it, which it sounds like that's style you're going for. For me personally, it was a little bit too much. It has this very kind of like noisy quality to it. So I might tone this down a little bit, maybe have a snare with like a slightly less tail to it, like a little bit of a tighter snare. That might work well, at least for me. I think that sounds good. I mean, if you're feeling the 80s, then go for it. But to me, I think it sounds like a little bit too much generic 80s as opposed to just straight up 80s. I think you can find a snare that sounds a little bit more interesting than this one, especially because it's so loud. Other than that, I like your synths. These sound really good. The bass line is a little bit garbled to me. I don't know if that's the right word. It's like, it's not really clear. Down. It sounds like maybe like open your filter up a bit more so we get a little bit more mid-range going on with it. Up to you. That wasn't a big deal to me though. The bass line's fine. I like the kick a lot. The kick I think is working real well. The other big thing is this arpeggiation you have going on. This guy. It works really well right here, but we're getting a lot of the same arpeggiation, the same notes, so a little bit more variety on how those notes are being played. Also, the octave could be really fun to play around with. Occasionally have it jump up an octave, and just to get more range of those notes. And maybe even take that same arpeggiation and play the exact same thing an octave higher for situations like this where you really want it to stand out, and that way it also just makes it bigger. I love this part. This little lead part here. Fantastic. It's kind of weird because it has this kind of sad, there's kind of like a melancholy to it, but it's also kind of like nice and happy at the same time, which I really like. I think it's a hard thing to do, to make something sound happy and sad both together. Like one person could listen to this and be like, oh, this is really like chill, you're driving down the highway in like Southern California kind of sound, and some people could be like, this is also like really kind of sad. So more of that, I think. But yeah, other than that, I think that it depends a little bit on kind of where you're going with it. I think that if you're going to put some vocals on here, I could hear a female vocalist on this, like a just super reverbed kind of vocalist, but really minimal on like the lyrics. Or you could just keep it as like a chill instrumental kind of thing. And I'm curious to hear where you're going with it. But yeah, I like it. Yeah, it's the weekend, but it's over soon kind of vibe, which is always a sad but happy place to be in. Yeah, big things to me are swap out the snare, fix the snare a little bit, see if you can get more out of that arpeggiator. I think the coolest part to me was this little section right here, because it's doing different things. And then once you get back into the beat, it just does the same thing over and over again. So more variety on that arpeggiator. Maybe bump up the bass line a little bit, make it sound a little bit clearer. But other than that, it's cool. Yeah, I think it'd be cool to hear this once there's a vocalist on it. I think that'll make a big difference because I don't think you need tons and tons of layers to make this work. I think it's just toss a vocal on it and you're good to go. Do you already have a vocalist lined up or a vocalist in mind for this, or did somebody ask you to make this for them? Sweet. So once again, we've gotten through everybody who submitted one track. So we're going to go back to people who have submitted multiple tracks. But if you are just now joining us or have just recently joined us, you are more than welcome to click on the link up at the top of chat. And that's where you can send me your tracks. But we got another track from Gauntya. This is a track we listened to earlier, but he's come back and finished it. Sick. Nice. Yeah, no worries, Roberto. I was like, I hope there's more. Yeah, the vocals sound great. This part needs one more sound. What just happened? I'm not sure why it did that. Hopefully everything's still working. That might have been my computer just messing up. Let me see what's going on here. Refresh. Let's go back to where we were. Yeah, that was my computer being weird. Sorry about that. Nice. Once again, fucking killer track. Sounds really great. Mix sounds really solid. Sound design sounds great. Love the vocals. Love the use of the synths. Drums sound super polished. I think the only two real pieces of feedback that I have here is your percussion, including your cowbell guy, are too loud across the board. So just turn those down a tiny bit. They're just sticking out a little bit too much of the mix. And then I think at the end, it needs to get super epic. And I think you mentioned you weren't happy with how it ended yet. And I agree. I think that you do a really great job of building up the energy for the first half of the song. And then you kind of reset the energy down low with the vocals and kind of rebuild from scratch there. And I think as you're rebuilding the energy, I want it just to climax and just be super epic. And I'm not entirely sure what that means in terms of your production and how you do that. But I think that it never got quite to the level of epicness that I want it to. So I think as it kind of this is great. This part here needs to just go off. And if you can pull that off, then you've got a super dope track here that I would not mind hearing at 3 a.m. in a sweaty warehouse in Berlin or something like that. This is such a cool track. But getting it super hyphy right at the end, getting it really loud, getting it like super intense is going to be, I think, key to making this song work. The only other thing you really need to do is just turn down the percussion. But other than those two things, I'm really, really digging it. And I apologize about just kind of it stopping in the middle. But yeah, that's a super sick track. Chat, any other thoughts, ideas, questions, comments? I'm not sure what breaststroke sounds means. Yeah, just add some more like, all right, so we're in this section here. I think honestly, if you put like a pitch rising sound, like a kind of sound, could really help bring up the energy quite a bit. Other than that, just bigger synths, more distortion, make it more epic. Like that, those horns there are really great. Yeah, something in that second half needs to bring up the energy level even more. All right, we got another track, or we got a track from Mr. Starbeast, who I feel like I haven't seen around here in a while. Welcome back. I feel like there's a few people on stream today who haven't been around for a while. Hopefully you guys are doing well and making some cool tracks. And he's got some Max for Live visuals from the Max for Live video that I made. Oh yeah, he put a possible flash warning. So if you are sensitive to lights and things, avert your eyes, I guess. also a really dope track. I love this. I love everything about the song. It sounds amazing. It sounds dope. Really cool vibe. Really good use of the bass. Really good use of the synths bouncing around, doing lots of stuff. It stays interesting the entire way through. Honestly, all day today, you guys have been just absolutely crushing it, and I'm like, I didn't actually do anything to help you guys write these songs necessarily, but like, I just like couldn't be prouder of like the crew that I have here, like making tracks and sharing them, which is awesome. In terms of feedback, I'm super curious if this is mixed and or mastered yet, because I feel like production-wise, I don't really have a lot of feedback here. I think the only two things I would really mention in terms of production are number one, more percussion, which I think I mentioned before when you played the song. Like, you have some percussive elements here at the end. But they're a little quiet. But I think during this section here, you're doing some like cool, interesting things with noise that create this kind of percussive element. And I really think, again, I like to give a lot of my feedback context. Like, you need to be thinking about, where is this track going to be played? Is this something you want people to sit at home and just listen to this and just, you know, freak out about how cool it is? Or do you want to like play this in a club? Do you want people dancing to this? And if so, you know, what does this club look like? Because this is the kind of track that I would love to play in a DJ set. But I also want to make sure people can actually dance to it. And I think having more percussion in here is going to make it more danceable. And therefore, DJs like myself who would like to play this are more likely to play it in their set. And so, but if you're like, I don't really care if people dance to it, I just want to do my own thing, then keep it the way it is, because it's beautiful. So that was the one thing. And then the other big thing was percussion, and then a little bit of a break section. I feel like you do that a little bit over here. Now, we don't really get a break section. I think it'd be really cool if somewhere in the middle here, somewhere from about, I don't know, 1:30 to about 2:30, somewhere in there, you inserted like a little bit of like 8 bars or 4 bars or 16 bars, depending on what you want to do with it, of like, you get rid of everything except for like 1 or 2 sounds. And that, I think, will help create more of a like energetic flow up and down. Because right now, to me, I think the big issue is it hits one energy level, which is really cool, but it kind of stays at that energy level the whole way through. So breaking it up a little tiny bit for, like I said, 4 bars or 8 bars. 8 bars are probably what I would do. And just like using those 8 bars to get really minimal, like take out most of the notes, most of the sounds, leave a couple sounds, let them bounce around with a bunch of delays and reverbs, just to kind of like change the energy. And then you bring it back in with the big bassy sounds, I think will be very impactful. So that would be super cool. Because right now it just kind of like it builds up to an energy and then just kind of sustains on that energy level. Yeah, so the last kind of like major piece of feedback here, I think that your mix and your master could still be tweaked a little bit. Mostly the mostly the master. It's sounding a little overcompressed, and there's just like a lot of stuff going on. And so I think one of the things you can do to make your mastering life easier is go back into the mix a little bit more and just EQ out a few more things, delete a few more things, like really like, you know, make it a little more minimal. I mean, not too much more. And then go back and then redo the master one more time. And just make sure, especially watch out for the low end on the master. It's going to be a little like, I love the sound of your bass and your big boomy bass and your kick, but they're sounding a little bit compressed to me. So you might be going a little bit too hard on the low end on your master. So maybe dial that back a tiny bit, and I think that'll actually help you get the entire master even louder. I love that part. I think your use of noise and distortion here is like really tasteful. I think it's really easy to go too over the top with some of that noise, and you did a really nice job of balancing out all the different elements here. Yeah, really dope track. I'm super into it. All right, we got time for one more track, and I think we have one more. Let me make sure. I think it's the second one from Yogi. Let me pull this up here. Is there anybody who has put a track in the spreadsheet that has not gotten their track listened to? I don't think so. I got through all those. Oh no, there's another one from Harris that I haven't gotten to. I'm gonna try to get through both of them. We'll see if we have time. Yeah, Mark, one of the things you can do, I talked about this a little bit last stream, and I need to actually just demo it on stream at some point or in a video, is if you feel like your limiter on your master is being hit a little bit too hard and it's overly squashing things, use 2 limiters back to back at the end of your mastering chain. Each one should get about 2 to 3 decibels of gain reduction. So just stack 2 of them next to each other. And that way, instead of having one where you're like doing a whole bunch of gain reduction, you're kind of dividing the workload in between your different compressors. And then that tends to allow you to be able to push it pretty hard, but also not have it sound overly squashed. All right, sweet. So this might be our last track for today. Well, we're gonna check it out. It's another one from, I think, Yogi. If you've enjoyed the stream, feel free to hit the like button or subscribe if you have not yet, or check out the Patreon. I got the new Patreon up and running. Nice. Another just super weird, goofy track, and I mean that in a really nice way. Reminds me a little bit of James Holden. He does tracks like this sometimes, where they're just like just super strange and out there. I would be super curious to learn how you do your sound design, because a lot of your sounds just sound like they're detuned and they're out of tune and they shouldn't work together. Like especially during this section right here. A lot of those sounds, to me, if I heard that sound, I'd be like, oh, that's not going to sound good with the rest of my song. Yet somehow all of them mesh together really, really well. So I'm curious what your process is around making these sounds or finding these sounds or processing these sounds to make them sound almost out of tune, but also still work. So I think it's just an interesting thing to me. I thought it was really cool. I think it stayed fresh the whole time. It goes through a bunch of different ideas and like stays interesting. It's like not quite dancey enough to like dance to, I don't think, but it still is like very heavy on the rhythm and does lots of interesting things with rhythm. I think the only place that I really felt like it wasn't working for me is this section right here. Once we get in here, I'm like, okay, I kind of understand what's going on here. So this section felt a little bit weaker than a lot of the things that came before it. I also feel like this section right here at the end was really interesting and unique and felt like it could have a lot of potential. So maybe take this idea, sprinkle it, make it longer, sprinkle it in, throughout different parts of the arrangement, because I thought it was kind of cool. Yeah, and like somehow you get all this stuff to work. Love this little tom section here. I think there's an argument to be made for potentially adding a little bit more structure in terms of like having an A section and a B section and a C section, having like jumping back and forth. So instead of having like verses and choruses, have like, okay, this is the first idea, and then we're gonna get a second idea, and then go back to the first idea. Because right now it feels like the arrangement feels a little jumbled, which I think it works. I think it actually is fine. But I think I would be curious for you to maintain chaos and what you're doing within the context of each section, but then structuring the sections in a way that's logical, if that makes sense. Because right now it feels like, okay, we jump from idea number 1 into idea number 2, into idea number 3, into idea number 4, into idea number 5, into idea number 6, into idea number 7, to idea number 8, to idea number 9. Nothing really repeats or structurally makes any sense. Which, again, that's a style choice. That's something that you could be like, I'm fine with that. I like my song structure not making any sense. In which case, go for it. But I would be curious if you were able to like, okay, I'm going to have these really chaotic sections, but then I'm going to organize those sections in a specific way. I don't think it's something you need to do, but I think it'd be an interesting songwriting challenge. That could be your homework for the week or whatever, is to write a song using all the same methods you're doing and creating all these like crazy, wacky, interesting ideas, and then structuring them in a way that's like, it doesn't need to be verse, chorus kind of thing, but like, okay, we got an intro section, and then we got an A section, and then a B section, and then we go back to A, and then we go to C, and then we go to D, and then we go back to A, or something like that. Yeah, I don't necessarily think you need to organize this one too much. I think that like the chaos works for this somehow. But I think just as an experiment, playing around with, okay, we're gonna have really chaotic sections, but organize the sections, or we're gonna have really organized sections, but then we're gonna be chaotic in how we organize, or inside of each section is gonna be not as chaotic, but then I'm gonna be chaotic in terms of how I organize them. I don't know. There's different ways to approach chaos when it comes to making music like this, and I think it'd be interesting to explore a lot of those avenues and kind of see where that lands you and see what you like. But yeah, it's cool. It's interesting. Definitely like fits in with your style. It works for the kind of style that you're going for and that you're making. Sweet. So at this point, we're gonna wrap up the stream. I appreciate all you guys joining me here on our brand new day. From henceforth, stream times are gonna be 3 p.m. Mountain Time on Monday and Wednesday. And if you are a Patreon member, Tuesdays as well. So hopefully this is easier for you guys. It seems like there's a pretty big number of people here today for our stream, so that's awesome. But no stream on Friday, obviously, because that's gonna be my day off from now on. And then I think, Harris, there is one more track that you have that I did not get a chance to listen to yet. I'm just gonna bump that to the top of the spreadsheet. So at the start of the stream next Wednesday, we'll listen to that first. Thank you, After Party. I appreciate the super chat. That really means a lot to me. Yeah, the tracks today were fire across the board. Everybody has just been crushing it with these songs, and it really makes me like want to start a record label or something. I don't know how to run a record label or how to do that. I just feel like we might have to put like a Catalyze compilation together and just like pick a bunch of the best songs from the streams for the last few months, and then just put it out on Bandcamp or something like that. I think that'd be fun. One of those ideas I'm slowly kind of working on, but you guys have had some really, really cool songs, and I definitely think that like you guys need to finish up those songs, get them released out into the world because they're sounding really cool. So yeah, so that's gonna be it for streams for this week. We'll see you guys hopefully on Monday. If you guys have any ideas for topics that you want to cover in the Monday stream, feel free to hit me up on the Discord or through whatever for the office hours stream. But yeah, everybody have a good rest of your week. Have a good weekend, and I'll see you guys next week.